Good morning, Lagos. Welcome to another episode of Breakfast with MyLAW. We have in the studio with me Yemi Adebo
Hi, good morning. Happy to be here.
and Senami Morris.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Today, our topic is going to be criminology and psychology and the operation of the different justice systems and its benefit and effect on society. So basically, we'll be talking about restorative justice or rehabilitative justice or retributive, which of those would be the best, for a society, and that's basically the conversation we'll be having. So I'm probably going to start with Senami. Can you tell us how important do you think psychology is to criminology, understanding the criminal mind, if anything?
Simply, I would say it's very important. Psychology is the basis of how anybody in this world operates.
Okay.
I think through psychology we are able to understand the functions and the operations of the human mind, the body and the spirit, all in one.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about the criminal mind, and we talk about, the things that people who are criminals, quote unquote, do, we can trace it back to why. And when you understand the function of the brain and the function of why people do the things that they do by way of psychology, it gets you closer to the truth and to the why of why they do that. So I think it's very important.
All right. So basically, I was reading some stuff where it was like the question of when you. So maybe I should paint a scenario. Emeka gets arrested for stealing 1 tuber of yam, right? And Emeka is put in prison. Emeka can't afford bail. Emeka is in prison for 2-3 years, right? By some stroke of luck, Emeka gets released. Now let's assume Emeka's propensity towards stealing was the type where he just gonna steal something little as a tuber of yam. And now he has been to prison, he's gone through that prison culture, which, if anything, looking at Nigeria, is absolutely retributive effect.
Yeah.
As opposed to this, I don't think there's anything restorative or rehabilitative about this. Like, when Emeka returns to society, is it better for it? Just society earn more points or get negative points for the return of Emeka? So based on, your involvement in practice and your experiences with this situation, what do you think, like in terms of the Nigerian system? What do you think will be the result of Emeka when Emeka comes out?
Okay, thank you. So first things is I think that they are actually restorative mechanisms in Nigeria. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Maybe we'll get there.
Okay.
But more importantly, the reason why retributive justice is in place is because there's generally a feeling amongst human beings that if someone does something bad to you, that person who's been hurt will never know peace until they see that person feels something. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So, being incarcerated will definitely make you not be happy. I don't know why, it's just a too of yam. But knowing what I know about the Nigerian system, that would be unhelpful to society. The relevance or the importance of criminal law is to reduce crime to the barest minimum and take society back to that equilibrium where it was before that crime was committed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? But when you send someone to a prison where three-quarters of the people in the prison are there because they are waiting trial, and then there's now a mega structure in place for who's the boss, who's this, and then the person becomes more hardened, and they still haven't understood what they did and why what they did is wrong.
Right.
There's no engagement, there's no attempt at healing them, there's no reintegration. You just release them back into the society. So for me, it's counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And that's just what it is. We just have tons of people going in, become hardened, and then come back to society and become menaces. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So basically, if you would argue, you would say you're going to approach of the restorative/rehabilitative approach will be more beneficial to society as opposed to retributive? Or do you
Yes.
think there are systems where retributive could be beneficial, it could ever work?
Primarily, it would be, for now, we're not even ready for totally restorative system. Nigeria is not ready. We don't have the framework for it. But I've always been a fan of a hybrid approach, retributive, restorative. Some things might not necessarily be, there's some people, some people might not be restored. There's some things you can't adequately compensate or try to bring people back for. And then also, there's nothing wrong in exploring both options, you understand. I've also thought of instances where you adopt a restorative approach and the person is to their bones, they're wicked. So they do something again and they know that, she's a psychologist. So you know about, you know about Skinner and Ivan Pavlov and all these things, how you punish bad behavior and then you reward with, this reinforcement. So if what they did is not met by something wicked or something equally mean, they have more tendencies to do something bad. Or let me say, if what they did is met to something so mild and they know they can always do that, then they will keep going back to, because it's restorative, you understand? So maybe at some point in time for some people, you would need to say, well, these are your records. We can't keep doing this. Something needs to be done, something retributive that would deter you further. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Understand.
Yeah, so like a hybrid is good generally, and that's what we have now, except that, the way Nigeria is, our laws are reactionary as against proactive.
Right.
So most states, for instance, the criminal framework now, we have the CA, the Criminal Procedure Act, and the Criminal Procedure Law. For most states, those people have not domesticated, they've not done their own, the way we have the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015. Lagos has ACJL. Those laws actually have provisions on restorative and retributive justice. For example, I'm working on a case in my office now on someone who took about $250 million from his employer and then invested in stocks in another company. And he was found guilty at the end of the day. And the court did not stop by sending him to jail so that he would come back and start pursuing the money that he invested. If he comes back, it's still his money, you understand?
Yeah.
So now they're asking the investee company to forfeit
The
that
amount
amount
of money.
and pay it to the complainant. You understand? So you understand he's been convicted. I don't know if he's going to jail, but it's not just I convicted you. You stole my money and the money is coming back to me. So in the ACJ we have things like probation now in Nigeria. We have community service. We have suspended sentences and stuff like that. It's just that it's a federal thing. ACJ is applicable to offenses created by acts of the National Assembly and all of that. Lagos is always going to be setting the pace. But most states, except maybe Anambra and River State, Ekiti maybe also, are still behind. They're not yet to come in terms with this trend. So to answer your question, I want a hybrid. And I think that Nigerian law needs to catch up in that regard.
All right. There's something you said that I'll come back to, right, in this particular case you used. But I want Senna to be able to. There's also something you said where like, some people are just wicked, right? I don't.
Yeah.
I can tell us if someone is just so wicked and nothing can be done in terms of psychology or trying to understand their mind, or because I think if somebody is wicked and you're trying to solve that problem with more wickedness, I really don't see a scenario where that makes it better, to be honest. And let's just hear from Senna.
That's a very hard question, or a very complicated scenario. Do I believe all people, or not all people, but there are certain people that are just plain just wicked? There's no redemption at all. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think for those people, those groups of people that are they just can't seem to get it right. Yeah. They just can't seem to get themselves together enough to care and to do things for the betterment of them in addition to other people. I think for those group of people, they just take a lot longer. I don't think all of us are made the same. I don't think, there's an equal part wicked, equal part good for each individual that comes into this world. I think for those people who are just more prone to wickedness, they need some help is really what it is. They need to be able to understand their actions. They need to understand where it came from, what triggers it. They need to treat themselves in my mind as like something to kind of unravel. Right. Like, I think of the human body in some forms as like a mechanism. So, right. You know, when you are able to recognize that you do certain actions that are bad, you have to trace it down to the root of it. Yeah. In order to really move forward and recognize when it does come up, okay, this something has triggered me and it makes me want to do this bad thing, and then you now reroute the action. So instead of doing the bad thing, because of that awareness that you've done and all that knowledge that you've acquired on how you get to this point of being triggered, you can actually choose to do something else, even if you don't want to. You get what I'm saying? I'm not saying that the wickedness won't, want to, prevail, but it's the choice that you don't choose wickedness, that you choose something else. I think that's what makes someone a good person, if that makes sense. And then
like Sigmund Freud.
Wow, that's so funny because I don't even like that guy. That's funny. But yeah, I think it's complicated because, again, there's going to be people that, will die and be wicked. They can go through all the restorative, all the, healing aspects of, getting better and that whole journey, and still just be wicked by the time they die. Maybe that's just why they're here. Everybody.
So far, people want to just be wicked.
Yes, no, because it's for balance. It's for balance. It's to give perspective to the people that are not wicked.
Why can't we try to find the balance in the people? Yes. And I mean, coming off what you said, where we're like, I don't think anybody anywhere is anything on their own. Like, I think for what Senai is today is a result of our experiences. What Yemi is today is a result of his experiences. I feel like what I am today is a result of my experiences. If we switched lives, most likely I become Yemi and Yemi becomes me in terms of attitude and everything, right? And I feel like unless they're like really, really, really abnormal scenarios, I feel like a lot of these people with these issues come from areas where, maybe it's broken homes, stuff like that. Different experiences that will shape people to that stuff. And so coming up what you said, where like it's trying to go to the roots of the problem. I think if there's somebody who's, let's take Luis Suarez, for example, the popular footballer who bites people. Yeah. You ask yourself the question, why do you bite people?
That's interesting.
How does that make any sense? Like, you're playing a professional game and you just put your teeth on someone. Like, where does this come from? Like, right. It makes no sense. And I think maybe if we use that approach and we look at all these people and we say, maybe it's coming from something in your childhood. Maybe do you hit women because you saw your dad hit your mom all through. There has to be like, and so like I feel like we humans, we never really think of that aspect. We just like to think this guy's wicked, he's a terrible person, kill him. Exactly. We never want to think about the fact that it's a result of something. It's a result of society. It's a result of. I don't think anybody drops from heaven and was just born to be the demon. Yeah, like God didn't look and say, too many protagonists. I need to create some villains, right? And I think like if we, occasionally say, let's try and understand why this person does these things, like, and with the idea we look at that from the area of redemption, right? And so we have a lot of situations where nobody cares about redemption. You did that, kill him, jigget and stuff like that, and then it's how positive is that? So for me, I believe, and I don't know how. So I think like right now we're having a conversation that's not just looking at Nigeria and it's not like we're going wider than Nigeria, because I think the Nigerian situation, for me, the prison system and all those things, like there's so many things in the country that haven't been fixed yet, that the concept of fixing the prison system is probably alien to anybody. It's like we that were outside, we're in prison, bro. That's what I'm going to tell you, right? But like I think sometimes maybe the prison is a reflection of society in itself, right? So I mean, if we can, try to understand, and I mean, so I have a couple of friends, and like maybe if I have like 30 friends, like 15 are from broken homes, right? And then someone would say person A is from a broken home, it turned out right. You have no excuse. Do you understand? Person B is from a broken home, it did not turn out right. Do you understand? They would say that, why can't you be like person A? But like there's a different,
they're two different people.
Yeah, and the way they would react to things. And I think like, so for like the longest part, people don't try to understand that. Maybe if we did, we would be able to see that maybe people aren't just wicked.
Yeah.
Right. And
however, some people are just because you grab, like, it's the truth, because
Ted Bundy types.
You grab like there are, and the thing is, I think ideally, regardless it's beneficial to understand why someone does the things that they do.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to criminal justice, the justice system, criminals in general, the criminal mind. Just so you just have a gauge of what's going on, like just overall. So I think that's important, but I don't think that always has to change the punishment aspect. In some cases, someone's going to do something bad, you're going to understand why, you're still going to have to punish them because they did something wrong. So understanding why someone does something doesn't exempt them from consequences. At least that's how I understand it and how I think it should be. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Some people work better and will heal better and will actually not, repeat that bad action if they go through restorative measures and rehabilitation. Whereas other people, like we mentioned, A and B type people, they will continue to do so until you give them retribution, or give them retributive measures. So yeah, I think it's a case-by-case basis, and I think regardless of what the, whether punishment or no punishment or rehabilitation or whatever it is, you should try to understand where the person is coming from, just so you understand what the person needs. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, some people are just wicked, and you just have to punish them.
Right. I mean, so what I'm getting from that is looking at the Nigerian, and I feel like for the most part now we are talking about probably ardent criminals, right? Because I mean, I feel like in Nigeria, if you look at looking at almost 40% of people in prison shouldn't probably be there, right?
40. Are you being kind?
Are you being kind?
Right. Because I personally have.
Wow.
Like this probably last month, and I was called up, I was at home, I was the closest to Pansi police station, and they're like, I have to go and try and get like the charges for a particular client, like I have to see what the charges are, because it was picked up at night and everything, because there was curfew that time, I think it was all those curfew period.
Yes.
And then I went to the office, to the police station, and like, so I was like two things, I was a youth, and I was a lawyer. Like, I was basically an aberration. Like, what was I doing here? Like, there was so much animosity towards me. Like, the police officer is holding a gun and it's like,
Yeah.
They didn't let me enter. They didn't let me see the charges. And then I had to go to court to, like, go and check the charges. And then I'm seeing, like, so I asked the person, like, my colleague, what did you say the name of this guy was? He says, so and so. I'm looking at the charges. Bro, sorry, you said the name again. Like, there could be two names. Because I'm looking at the charges and I'm hearing that the charges guy with mother of an inspector.
Wow.
Like, what does that have to do with? Didn't they say? Oh, I was so confused. I like, no, maybe it's not him. He said that's him, right? And the court, the court registrar or something. The guy is like, I saw it happen. I'm like, what does he mean by I saw it happen?
Yeah.
He said, that's why whenever there's curfew, he sits his ass at home. It's not going anywhere because they can carry you and slam any charge on you.
Wow.
Do you understand?
That's scary.
Very.
And nobody's exempted, even if you're a lawyer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Seems like an institutional problem.
Yeah, because I was so confused. That's like from 0 to 100. They carry this guy. I mean, later we got him out. But like, imagine if it was someone who could not afford. It was just one of those people that was on the streets and can't afford like 1 meal a day. Who's person is going to bail him?
What's concerning is that he's going to be locked up. The bigger problem is not that he's going to die for killing someone. The bigger problem is that for the next 15 years, he'll wake up and sleep in that prison.
Knowing he's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, and you don't get, the problem is he will never be heard. There will not be an opportunity to say, oh, based on the evidence, on the balance of, what do you call this thing? Beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
You were not there, you have an alibi.
Yeah.
This is where you went to buy bread. Call the bread woman. Did he buy bread from you? Yes, he bought bread. Was it past midnight? So at best, he breached the regulation on curfew. Yes, okay, release it. No, that opportunity will not come.
Wow.
So the next 15 years of his life, where they should be formative years, should become something good in life.
To society.
Yes, will be truncated because he will be in prison. And because it is congested,
God.
the courts don't have opportunity to, they will never hear him. So the locking up is not because you're a murderer as part, okay, we want you to die. Is that you will rot in that jail.
Yeah. It's the wickedness of it. Because
Yeah.
that's even more wicked than...
Do you get? So that one is not even psychoanalysis anymore. It's not why do people do things. It's that there is an institutional problem that needs to be attended to, and it is worrying that for several decades this is continuing. Like
Yeah,
we keep saying do this, and it doesn't happen. And then I was going to say that for this whole thing about punishment for people and restoration and all that. So you know there are some things that they are offenses or they are crimes just because culturally, all of us, societally, we decided to prohibit them. And not because they are repugnant in their own right. Like for instance, if you're driving against traffic or you pull up on the side of the road and let's say for any reason Lagos state laws criminalize that, it's not something disgusting, do you understand? As against rape, murder. So the way criminal law distinguishes malo means say malo prohibita, some things are just prohibited by law, so don't do them because it's a crime. Some things are prohibited because they are not acceptable. Do you understand? So I feel that it is because of things like this that there must be a balance. You must give opportunity for dialogue, for restoration. I'm not, and that's also important for enforcement, our revenue, our money. So first things first, the people in the other side of the world, the Western world and all of that, when people like Cicero Lombroso were in criminology saying, oh, I want to understand why people do things, so that besides enforcing and punishing them, we can put in place frameworks to help those kind of people thrive, or to curb that kind of behavior, to show them why it should not be done. Also, he says, if there's an extra Y chromosome in a male child, there's tendency that he will be, or when somebody's skull looks a certain way, they have tendency to, when people are born around parents who are convicts or ex-convicts, basically there's some rationalization so that we can then spend less money pursuing people and trying to fix society in a way that, and then it's just that inherently we just want to punish. So for instance, if we want to insist as a society that same-sex marriage must be criminalized, that's not the debate for today, so I won't get into it. If you want to insist, rather than sending someone to jail for 14 years for doing that, why not set up a system where there's an interaction, there's a dialogue, to understand when did this begin to happen to you? Why did you feel this such? Because the person is not hurting anybody.
Maybe from that dialogue you can even understand that it's natural.
Do you understand? And then maybe there might be some empirical way or scientific way of helping children that are born subsequently to become what society wants them to become. But don't just throw people in prison. And for instance, also I'd written severally on the subject of marijuana and the decriminalization of it for several other purposes. We can make money from this. It's medicinal, it's helpful, it's relatively innocuous, you understand? Let's just explore. But the next thing, if they see you at the airport, you're eating brownies, people actually take these things for granted. Brownies, it contains, in colloquial expression, Igbo, and you will go to jail by an Indian Hemp Act. Do you understand? It's so small. But then imagine a final year law student, so bright, topping his class, and he sees that the only time he feels at peace when he reads is when he eats something with weed in it, or maybe he smokes marijuana. Don't you want to speak with him rather than picking him at that point in time and saying, you're done, this is not acceptable? So there must always be an understanding of why an offense was created, what that offense does, how do people suffer from it. This person you're throwing away, what input would they have had in society? And you understand? And then bring everything together to solve a larger problem. Remember, criminal law is not so that people can suffer. It's that society must remain intact, must remain sane.
And safe.
You understand?
The law was made for man was not made for the law.
Exactly.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Well, this whole conversation reminds me of Nigerian parenting. Because when we talk about the prison system and how it's like, you know, equal to societal and social system, it's the punishment is where the emphasis is. And I feel like as parents and as, you know, well, I'm not a parent, but parents want to emphasize punishment. They want to emphasize that you did something wrong and they want you to be punished for it because they want you to see that what you did was wrong. However, we have all had situations where the punishment did not match the action. Do you grab? And you go away being like, so I'm not even sure what I did wrong. And it creates a whole entire mental like dialogue in your head, and then people actually get older and develop like certain ways of being in regards to that situation. You know, that actually prevent them from being their best selves. People have low self-esteem. People get jealous very easily to the point of like doing unnecessary actions. People are possessive. They're controlling. I mean, the list goes on. And this could all, you know, stem from the fact that they were punished too much for something that didn't match. So you get what I'm saying here?
They didn't even understand why they were being punished.
Yes, exactly. So this just reminds me of Nigerian parenting, if we're thinking about it large scheme, and just how like you have to understand that not everything requires the ultimate punishment. You know, there are levels to this ish. You get me?
Yes.
So yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind.
Alright, so probably while we move back to, you know, the prison system, criminology and psychology and all that. So recidivism, right? Looking at you want hybrid of restorative and then retributive and stuff like that. But it's shown statistically that recidivism is extremely high when it comes to retributive approach. I mean, Bob Cameron was saying the American concept of the prison system is to, you know, incapacitate, deter, and, you know, punish before even thinking of rehabilitation. I think by the time you've gone through those three things, I don't think the person is ready to be rehabilitated at that point. I mean, so you look at the recidivism rate in America, it's around 70%, right? And you look at another country at the opposite end, Norway.
Beautiful place.
Yeah. Although I always say, like, probably Norway can't do that because, I mean, their society is so... Right, I feel like if you try to do prison like that in Nigeria, a lot of people just commit crimes just to go to that prison. But I mean, but we can juxtapose the United States with Norway because at least those are two. They're way better than So and then they are so focused on reformation, right? You come in, like, probably the only punishment you're really getting is the loss of your freedom. They let you have to read certain things. You have to read certain things. Probably have to read about philosophy, about life understanding. Like, and I think unless someone is brain dead, it's only natural that, you know, and it's why they have like the lowest recidivism rate in the world, the lowest,
as well.
In the world. Do you understand? I mean, so when we look at those situations and this person is operating something only on this side, and this person operating something only on this side, and this is what's happening. I feel like, do you not think it's almost beyond clear that, you know, restorative or rehabilitation, the rehabilitative approach is way better? And then I wondered, like, okay, if Norway has this approach, what if Ted Bundy was Norwegian? What are these people going to do? Right? Apparently, they have a serial killer in Norway who killed like 21 people. Right? And so they don't do death sentence. Right, but you don't get released until it is clear that you are rehabilitated. So, but I think if years ago it was something like 21 or something, and then there was outcry, outrage, like why? That's so low. Guess where this outrage and outcry was coming from? From people outside Norway, right? The Norwegian people were fine with it. Do you understand? So I'm looking at both systems. Like you have to, I mean, ask yourself. I think recidivism is like the most important way to analyze the functionality of your prison system. Because at the end of the day, the Crime Act and all those stuff exists to deter people from doing things and for the betterment of society. So if what you're doing is making Emeka, for example, come out and statistics show that in like a month Emeka is going to commit another crime. And even Nigeria is just way worse because some people aren't even exactly criminals. Like we've concluded and we agree based on statistics that a lot of people aren't even there for things they should be there for, and then you just turn them into criminals. So basically society is getting worse. So I mean, do you really still think a fully restorative approach is not the best? I mean, if we're in a fully functional Nigeria, not this one.
No, even if I still wouldn't. So it's not a thing of 1 + 1
right.
2. You understand? Because you're doing a restorative system does not mean people will behave better. Like I said earlier, I can't
are you saying this because we're Africans?
No, for real. I can't say like this is my explanation. But some people will always have tendency to do bad things, to violate laws, to be criminal. You understand? And the best way to make it work is to have a system that provides two different solutions. Does this match this instance? Does it not? Okay, let me give an instance. I met someone who wanted me to undertake like a rape situation, and for her, what was more important was having a conversation about
with the rapist.
Yes.
Oh,
the person
interesting.
wanted to talk. And a lot of Nigerians, for instance, till date are not familiar with the concept of post-penetration rape. About, I give you consent, but then later on I told you, you need to stop.
Yeah.
They don't understand.
They don't even understand it can
How dare you?
be marital rape.
Do you get?
Man,
Although
it's
a law doesn't really. But then these are existing things. And so someone who does post-penetration rape might not be a bad person in the strict sense of it. Or like someone that comes to my house to steal from me. I'm giving you everything I have, and then you still hit me with the gun, you take my daughter, and you want to rape my daughter. That's more distasteful. Or like someone with whom you were having, you understand?
Yeah.
And then the person, somehow, did not have the wisdom to understand that when somebody says,
Stop.
you
Stop.
you should stop.
Yeah. Regardless of what was being said in the
Do you
beginning.
understand?
Yeah.
So rape is punishable by life imprisonment. Right? Why do I want to send someone who did that kind of thing to life imprisonment rather than have a conversation? Talk to the person you've ruined. This is what you did. This is the impact of what you did on their lives. How do you want to remedy this? That person wants to understand why you did this to them. Did you never love them? Did you never? Do you understand?
Right.
It sounds very utopian, very theoretical.
Nah.
But then in those other places, they do
Things like
do you
this.
understand?
Right.
Then at the end of the day, you can be reintegrated in the society.
And you're better for it because
You
you've learned.
understand? Or you might even be on probation.
Right.
You might be
Community
not
service,
to
whatever.
entirely condemned, especially because these things are not a function of one thing. It might be restorative, and the person will come back being bad. Why? Because the misery index in Nigeria is bad. There's no employment, and he has to go back to the road
Yes,
to rob.
exactly.
And then when he robs and he's on alcohol, the next thing to him is, I need to sleep with someone.
Right.
And then he goes to rape somebody. It might not be because he didn't learn that what he did was bad, but the environment
Circumstances, yeah.
is pushing him. So
Right.
it's like a hierarchy. It keeps coming down. Is there a social problem? Is there strife? Is there poverty? Is the misery index high?
Yes.
Amongst other things. So when all these things, at the end of the day, you find the person committing. So it's not just about how you solve the
Of
criminal
course,
problem.
of
So
course.
even if you pick retributive, you pick restorative, if the person is coming back to
A shitty ass situation.
so
Yeah.
that's just what I see. But I maintain that I want what I want does not matter. But I think a hybrid,
Yeah, you
which is
think-
what we have now.
yeah.
You know why it's not even, you're not seeing it? It's because it's not being done properly.
Right.
You
Is anything
understand?
being done properly in Nigeria?
It's not. I mean, even plea bargains that they do,
Mm.
they end up corrupting the process.
Right.
So we need to do it right, and then when we're doing it right and it's still failing, then you change the system. You don't change what's not broken. You understand? What we have has not been explored, so why change it?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
We're going to come back to that and I'll be asking Senna some questions, but let's take a break.
All right.
Awesome. Welcome back to Lex Radio. Still breakfast with MyLAW. I still have in the studio Miss Senami Morris and Yemi Adebo. Right before we went on the break, Yemi was talking about, intensities of offenses and how, we might need to have a conversation about the intensity of the sanction, post-penetration rape, and the general sanction for rape. Should there be a conversation about, should that be the exact punishment that should operate? And so I was going to ask Senna on our opinion on that.
Right. So I think everybody needs different things. We had already been talking about the criminal side of, what criminals need, and it might vary depending on the act, but also depending on the person and their background and what works for them. I think the same goes for the victim of the situation.
Right.
We've seen many situations where, someone has killed a mother's son, and the mother is quote unquote quicker to forgive, the offender of the person that murdered her son than other people are. And I think you have to give space for that. You know what I mean? You can't always if this thing happens to me, I'm going to reply in this way, and that way being the extreme. We've talked, multiple about the intensity of punishment. But I think what I want to emphasize is the fact that this lady that you mentioned actually had the courage to actually sit down with, her rapist and have this conversation because that's what she needed.
Yeah.
Some people don't have that type of courage. Some people don't even want to do that, which is also okay. But I think being able to give space for that being an way,
Option.
yes, exactly, for that being an option is very important, because I think it could be very beneficial for the person who committed the crime as well.
Right.
To heal.
To understand, because again, we talked about people not understanding what went wrong, what they did wrong, but having a conversation with the person that they offended would be very beneficial as well. So I think that's what I think about it. Giving the space, giving the option, and letting that be enough for the person, and not think about it from a perspective of, okay, I'm third party, I see she wants to talk to her rapist, and that's just not enough for me. I need that guy in jail.
Yeah.
Like, I need him in prison
Pay
for
what
life.
he did.
It's not about you. It's not about you. Like, it's about what that person needs. So yeah, giving the space for different options is very useful.
All right. Okay, so we've been having these conversations, and I'm just going to ask Senna. So, looking at the system of, arrest, incarceration, and everything, how important do you think psychology is to, helping with reformation and reduction of recidivism? Like, do you think it's something like the government itself should look into, like, people who commit certain crimes or or criminals in jail, should they have access to, psychologists? How important do you think that conversation is?
I'm actually very passionate about this, and this is something that they don't really talk about in psychology when you're doing your psychology formal education. But we cannot neglect the fact that people are coming back into society after being ripped of their freedom, ripped of their resources, ripped of any type of support from family, from society. They're coming into a whole new realm of being once they've come out of, exactly, it's changed their life. And with that being said, there's this expectation that people should just get back to the way things were. I've got out of prison for 15 years, for 2 months, for 2 weeks, for 10 months, and I should just be chill. I should just be cooking. I'd be enjoying my life, enjoying my family. It's not that. It's not that simple. Yeah, and that's like enough. But I think it's very important for there to be a aftermath process.
Right.
After you get out of jail, there needs to be a process in which you go to therapy.
Right.
I really do think that you need to see somebody who needs to help you dissect how you're feeling, what you did, how you're trying to continue your life, because this isn't the end of it.
Right.
Although society wants to convince you otherwise in many different ways. You can't get a job, and multiple other things.
Apply for office.
Exactly. And people have shunned you, and things like that. So you have to understand that their life still continues, and they need to be able to live a quality life as best as they can, but society doesn't think about that. We just expect people to be fine. I think the same thing, this is kind of off topic, but just to give a more perspective, the same thing goes for, military people when they come back home.
Right.
From being abroad, being, in wars or whatever. Exactly. They come back home and now everyone's like, oh, finally you're back. Everything is fine. No.
Right.
I mean, did you just neglect the fact? Exactly. Like, you've experienced an immense amount of trauma that no one has ever experienced. Not many people have. And people expect you to be fine. PTSD is a real thing.
Right.
And it's something that people need to acknowledge that is treatable, in addition to it needs treatment. And psychologists can help with that. So I definitely think therapy is very important for criminals that have come out of criminals, quote unquote, that have come out of jail and prison and things like that.
Right. So in conclusion, looking at the topic, psychology in regards to criminology, what form of justice is best for society, I think we've been able to conclude, or probably reach our conclusion, that it's probably a hybrid version that is best, right? And then when we have that, we need to have like understanding of the psychology in terms of like therapy being a necessary part of the process. Be able to realize that Nigeria does operate the hybrid system, but it's like a system that they've not ever done well, and maybe with future progression we can do all these things better, right? And then like really half the time when we sit here and have conversations, it's mostly with the young people, and why we have these conversations, it's like the hope that while we go back to our daily lives and whatever we do, we try to wherever we go, like in the next 2 decades, we had people that will probably be in the positions where we can make these changes, and you can look back and say, oh, we had a conversation about this, and maybe we can there's a huge reason for you to stay and try to make Nigerians understand the importance of psychology in terms of the crime system. It's really not, people who understand criminology like this shouldn't really be leaving the country, to Canada or whatnot.
It's true.
Yeah, we should all stay here. Like, this is wasted if we have people who understand this thing, the young people who understand the situations and who understand the nitty-gritty or the nuances of why the system is failing to this extent, and we are just, so bent on leaving and going somewhere else. I don't know. It's everybody's personal decision, but we hope like these conversations can, encourage us to do better as youths, as Nigerians, and as a people generally. Thank you very much for being on the show, Senami and Yemi. I think we're able to, have this conversation. We dabbled, became dynamic, we went out of it, we came back, and we're able to, at the end of the day, people can watch this and make sense of it and understand certain things, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Thank you.
maybe a prison warden watches this and changes the way. I'm extremely. That's been extremely helpful. Thank you so much for coming. It was nice to have you, Senami and Yemi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.